Hi, divine friends of the light. Welcome and blessings from my heart to yours. In today's video, we will be discussing the 10 main steps to bring about a positive ego. Yeah! So to build a positive ego is to recommit to really being done with your negative ego. Isn't that exciting? So to build a positive ego that is going to work for you and that is going to help you move and look forward in your reality, rather than always looking backwards. Okay? Now, building an ego may be very appealing, but we are not talking about that negative ego. We are talking about a positive ego, which for some, unfortunately, doesn't exist. And for those of you who have a positive ego, it does exist, unfortunately, or fortunately, perhaps it's invisible. So a lot of things happen when we talk about ego. Getting involved in a situation, to trying to convince people, right? Your ego is a good thing to give up. The negative ego, to convince you and show you, is very much like trying to convince you it's a good thing to be a grown-up or an adult. Trying to convince you that growth really is pretty neat. We would suggest here, unfortunately, that has to happen because of the tendency of the stubbornness represented by the negative ego itself. So a very good example of what the negative ego is, indeed, the alien that is within each of you. We would suggest one needs to look back to the biblical reference to the devil and the development of Satan in the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, Lucifer, the fallen angel, is most definitely a representation of what your negative ego is. We would suggest here the positive ego functioning in its capacity, in its wholeness, falling from its position of positiveness to indeed attempt to take control and to have power. We would suggest in the New Testament the very clear examples of the temptations of 40 days in the desert and the temptations of the devil is most definitely the ego communication. We would suggest all of you go through that, but maybe it doesn't last 40 days in the desert. Maybe it's 40 years, but nonetheless, you got to go through it. Your ego tempts you and coaches you and promises you all kinds of great things. Great, wonderful things. Great wealth, great fortune, great fame, great acknowledgement. It promises you all of that. You would suggest many of you bathed in, didn't you? That's the thing about the ego. That one day people may learn it promises everything, right? And delivers nothing. There has not been a negative ego around yet that has ever delivered that which has promised to deliver. So be it. So we would suggest here what happened in that story. What were the marvelous way and unique and treacherous ways that the devil was denied? Just by saying, no, get behind me, Satan. No fancy sort of way of dealing with that, right? No mystical, magical potion or medications, etc. Just a simple no will do. So we would suggest here that it was sufficient then, so it is now. But there are many analogies to what your negative ego is all about, but you all know what your negative ego is all about. If you would but stop for a moment and look at of what goes on there, as we have said, the negative ego doesn't want you to stop, doesn't want you to turn around and look. Okay? We would suggest for many of you today, during this period of time, we will have plenty of opportunity to stand and see how your ego functions, because it's going to be there for some of you in full glory, dress, uniform. Some, as a thief in the night, is going to be there sneaking up and ripping you off here and there. But we would suggest most definitely your ego will be here as you talk about transforming and building your ego. So the positive ego is not just being a positive ego, but having a positive ego functioning once again. Yeah, because the negative ego will have been released or transformed and therefore returned to normal size, delivering messages like it should have been all along. So we would suggest here in this particular regard, that's where the positive ego comes in. And as you start recognizing, I do have a positive ego. I do expect messages delivered. I do expect reports of what is happening in reality, reports that I'm going to form and contextualize and and therefore what you do to get a positive ego. Once you have handled this negative ego and indeed processes all the steps I discuss in all my videos and write-ups, and you talk to yourself and say, I'm done, it's gone, that's it. You see, then you created a void, an opening, space, and ego that isn't anymore. Something has to fill that space. If you don't, your ego will. You see, that's what happened all along. You created this space. Nope, no one is taking responsibility for the form of your life. No one is taking responsibility for the context of your life. No one is handling the content and context and form of your metaphysical or spiritual life, so the ego has to. If you eradicate the negative ego, then you leave that empty spot. Something has got to fill it, right? And just like a child digging at the beach, when they dig a hole in the sand, if you don't put something in there, it's going to fill back in. And you will be like that child, constantly digging yourself out from your ego. So once you clear it, you have to put something in. That's where you build a positive ego, and that is done as follows. So the first step to bring about a positive ego is there are many steps to transform your negative ego. You must decide now to commit to really being done with your negative ego. That is the first step to building a new one, okay? So the negative ego gives statements like, I can do this myself, and when it's forced to ask for help, it can't. Oh, you can say the words all right, but you can't really ask for help. So when it comes to this step, this will flush it out into the open like a quail or a grouse hiding in the bush. When you come to ask for help, I want God, Goddess of all that is, to help me. Please help me get rid of my negative ego. I'm calling upon my higher self. Please help me. I'm calling upon my counsel to please help me. I'm asking for help. The ego can't do it. The ego can pretend it said it, but it won't be sincere. This is where you will fall down if you're going to fall down by where after this point. This is where it separates. If you sincerely ask for help, and we would tell you this, you must ask for help. It is not an option. It's not, well, I'm doing well enough, thank you very much, I don't need to ask, I don't need to bother God with my little ego problem. That is your ego talking right then. I have already handled my ego. That is ego. It doesn't say anything any different. It says the same old dumb, stupid messages over and over. I can do it myself, and I am handled, right? And that's where it will trip you up on this step. Number two, the second step is bring about a positive ego is you personify that negative ego. And you make it like into a person. You see what he or she looks like, and you personify it. Put it outside of yourself, even though it's you. Hey, I might have an ego. It's a part of your personality, yes, but you want to put it outside of yourself for purpose here. There is my negative ego, and I can see what he or she looks like. I have recommitted to being done with it because I have personified it. Okay? The third step to bring about a positive ego is I want to really face the payoffs and what were you getting from keeping your negative ego? What were you getting? What benefits, what rewards, and what investments did you get out of this negative ego? Nothing. If you do not know, ask it. Hey, you, ego, what was I getting from you? And what was I avoiding? What righteousness was I holding? What guarantee was I seeking? What self-pity? What better than? What unprocessed fantasy? What past was I afraid to give up? What punishment was I wanting to inflict? What were my payoffs? What were my investments? Why didn't I give up this ego before? As I am there, recommitted, personified, and now understanding, facing, and owning my own payoffs. The fourth step to bring about a positive ego is to perhaps is the most difficult for you and is the most critical, and this is why most people will fail in creating a positive image. Why most people will fail at creating a positive ego and therefore invite their negative ego to come back instead. They will get rid of the sickness, but they won't heal it. And the sickness will return because of this fourth step. They won't do this fourth step. The fourth step is to ask God, Goddess of all that is, ask your higher self, ask your guides and counselors to help to be done with your ego. Simple. The fifth step to bring about a positive ego is to think. We would suggest here to lay out a plan, and every day I'm going to think and I'm going to set aside time to think. We would suggest starting easy, 15 to 30 minutes, and working up to an hour. We would quite, mean that literally we are not lurking about it, to set aside time to think, and at the end of every day, stop and figure out, what did I think about today? To not just think about what time is the bus and what time am I going to be picked up at and what's for dinner. That's just running through facts. We mean thinking in terms of using your brain to think about something you haven't thought about or to think about something you haven't realized yet, right? Exploring new areas, new awareness of thought. We would suggest, if you want to stimulate that thinking by reading, then read, right? It does not have to be hard text and hard study like the basics of quantum physics, algebra, etc. Something you're interested in, passion, maybe new gardening techniques or how to build a house, science fiction, right? Forces you to think, right? If you read it with the idea, that's what I'm going to do with it, a good book that forces you to think. We would set aside a beginning, right? 15 minutes to 30 minutes where you're going to purposely think about something in the abstract and the attempt to find, right, done, kind of inclusive that you haven't been aware of before, like my daily new write-ups, letting me think about that. Well, the very fact that everything that is created destroys its creator, let me think about that. Or maybe some other phrase I've heard of in my readings, come across a sentence or a word I don't understand or know the meaning of, and look it up, understand the definition, think on it, or let me grasp a new concept, or think about something you have accepted but not given much thought about. I have just taken it. Take the idea, create my own reality. What does that mean to you? What are its ramifications of it? Seriously, do this, and even make a checklist where at the end of the day, I look at it, did I think today? And I'll mark I did or I didn't. And still have time to think today. And to even write down what you think about. Not an ego statement of, oh, look what I write down. Won't they be impressed? No, probably not. I'm not going to like it. The sixth step to bring about a positive ego is to look for the joy, right? We have said that many times throughout all of our daily write-ups for years. And through my videos. I mean, quite specifically, to do that, to again, on your checklist, what was the joy today? Because every day there is joy. Maybe not every minute, but there is an everyday joy. Sometimes you may have to look under a couple of incidences or your day to find it. But it's there, and find it. Every single day, the joy. Yeah, even to wake up in the morning with that. Today, I'm going to find more joy than I did yesterday. And I'm going to search for it like an Easter egg hunt. I'm going to search for joy. Where's my joy? Find joy. Woohoo, joy! And find it. The seventh step to bring about a positive ego is to look for love. Not the syrupy sort of thing that comes with some sort of abstract love of whatever. But to look for the defining moments of love. Not looking for who you made love today with, but to look for the lovingness. On your checklist, what did I find today? And when you wake up, set the intention, I'm going to find the love today. Here is when we call back the magic of love, the defining moments of love, the embrace of our love. You see, throughout your day and life, you have had to define moments of love, right? What are some examples of defining moments of love in your life? Well, those moments when summer would never end. The day that went on forever, so magically, midsummer afternoon, or on the beach at your favorite time of the day. Maybe in the garden, or a hiking trip, or the reunions of love with another planned on, right? Talking on the phone for a minute, but it ended up being hours of excitement. The birthday party, the walk along the beach, the timeless sharing and giving, the moments like Christmas, right? Or anniversaries with a partner, where you felt uplifted, light, airy, one with everything, tingly, hot, invincible, one with everything, etc. It was, and it is, an exceptional day today. Do you know this? Or do you now remember defining moments of love, divine ones? These moments of love are moments you define, not others define for you. No one can define your love, right? What makes up a defining moment of love? A moment of love that is expansive and life-changing, consists of the presence of crossing energies that form expansiveness, right? Of energy that creates a positive ego. Yeah! Now, the 8th step to produce a positive ego is to look for the ease, not the simplicity, but the ease. How could I add to create ease to my day? How easy could I make it today? What could I have done smoother or more gently? What could I have done with less hassle and stress? What could I have done with less anxiety, panic, or worry? To maybe even think about that. And you might kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but to look for that. So the 9th step to produce a positive ego is to look for the laughter. Because you are the silliest part of your reality. Maybe sitting there being scared, and all of a sudden you will say, look how silly this is. I'm creating a reality out of fear that I am totally in control of, and I'm sitting over here being scared about it. How foolish can you be? That's like shadows on the wall and letting them scare me, right? For crying out loud. That's pretty silly, right? Look at me. I'm sitting here creating a reality out there wondering what's going to happen. That's like betting on the replays, for crying out loud, and losing. Really, it is it is very much like that, and realize the silliness of it. I'm actually telling this person that my life is screwed up because of something that happened in the past that didn't even exist, and I'm expecting them to buy that. That's pretty silly. And I am still holding on to this excuse and realize the silliness of it. I see it all the time. Right? To look for the laugh, not only in the silliness, that is you, but the silliness that goes on out there with other people. Sometimes you may feel, oh, I shouldn't be laughing at this. But it is damn funny. Your ego doesn't take it that way. Many times we hear people's problems and laugh at it. That's really weird. Why did you do that? That's what I'm calling you for. Tempted to say we don't have the foggiest idea, but we don't nonetheless, we wouldn't have done that if we were you. Think about next time, don't do that. Look for the laughter because it's there all around you at this time. Not that you should go through life just laughing, because there are serious moments and serious times. But in between those is the sound rich in laughter. On your list, did I laugh today? Ha ha! Did I do something to make myself laugh? Did I laugh today? Checklist. Which at first will seem silly, but we would suggest for some of you, and most of you, exactly to go about it that way. So the 10th step to develop a positive ego is which one of the 3 windows are you viewing your reality with, Divine Ones? There are 3 classes of windows to view your reality with. Ego, subconscious, and higher consciousness. And many windows within each class, okay? So what we would suggest is to evaluate your point of view and where are you looking from, as well as where are you looking to. The reason we say that is this, okay? Look at yourself like this bubble of consciousness. You as a conscious being, as a soul or a spirit that is inside, okay? There are many windows in which to look. You can look through a victim window, or you can look out a happy window, or you can look out everyone's out to get me window, or I'm being attacked by Dark Lord's window, or you can look out any window you choose. You can look out the window that every woman is my mother and every man is my father. You can do that. There are many windows to look out of, Divine Ones. There are 3 main groups of windows. One group of windows is the ego. Another group of windows might be called the subconscious window. And the 3rd category of windows, which would be called, right, the higher consciousness, because that is where the unconscious mind is in direct route to. There are 3 classes and many windows in each class. When you look out the window of the ego, you're not looking forward in your life. Oh, you may be talking of a future such as one day I'm going to, right? But you're not looking forward, and you're looking backwards in your life. That future you're talking about is based upon the past. You're not looking out the front of this particular vehicle, capsule, or spaceship. That is you. You're looking out the ass end of it. What are you seeing there are a lot of promises of a future, but no future at all. What you are instead seeing is the stuckness of the past, and you are caught in a web of it. When you look out the subconscious window in terms of understanding, analyzing, and logically dealing with the subconscious, you are very much so looking at a metaphysical view of reality, seeing things for what they are, metaphysically. The most advantageous window is to look out are the ones that look forward, the windows to the higher self, the windows that go beyond your physical, not to exclude it, but to go beyond it. You're in this particular capsule that's flying through space, and because you don't want to look at the void, right, out there, you drop screens and create the illusion of reality out there. You can look out those ego windows all you want to and pretend you have a future when you know you don't, and be stuck, never getting anywhere, right? Other than a destructive place, actually destroying yourself only to come back and do it again. We would suggest turning completely around and looking out the windows to the higher consciousness and looking out to all that you can be and more. Let yourself have hope. Let yourself have love. Let yourself have joy. Let yourself have that sense of being more than just a mere mortal, a mere physical being, a mere animal that stands around. Let yourself appreciate that moreness. Let yourself go for that and to stretch for that. When you open and feel the void that opens to the positive ego can then function harmoniously, delivering rapidly the messages of the information that you need, and you can form and contextualize your life with. Although that sounds somewhat abstract, nonetheless, as you start doing that and start looking through those windows, actively taking your day, and rather than viewing it as just your day, view it through the windows of what is this really? What is the spiritualness? What is my spiritual understanding? Where is my higher consciousness in all of this? As you do that, you don't have room for that negative ego to grow again. Your negative ego will show up, but easily move out of the way. You see, you have grown and you have changed, and we say it often because it is so utterly, fantastically beautiful, true, and so has your ego. Yes, your positive ego has grown stronger and more powerful. Your negative ego is not the same that it was, but your negative ego, whose changes have primarily been adaptive and also symptomatic, meaning there have been changes of symptoms rather than the genuine, I'll never change, looking good, feeling good, and performing right, but not really changing, have been adaptive, symptomatic change. And even though it is not as negative overtly as it used to be. Both ego faces have changed. The negative face of ego can still obscure the positive one. The negative face of ego can still interfere with your plans and your dreams. It's time for change, people. The natural evolution of consciousness is a very slow sort of thing, right? Those of you, what is the new age of consciousness, right? And what is of all of that? What it all indeed boils down to is this conscious interjection in that evolutionary process. Rather than waiting around to see where the natural course of things go, all right, the new age and the new age consciousness, you folks change course by adding to it. What it is an infusion into the natural process with a conscious decision. Hurry up, get going. Let's drive this ship. Where are we going rather than to see where it takes us? Therefore, it is speeding up, and you can't deal with it alone. You need to transform that negative ego, which is willing to deal with it for you, but can't. To release it, to transform it, and then develop something else instead, like a positive ego and a positive you. Yeah! So transform your negative ego into a positive ego and create the reality you want, divine ones. Thanks for listening to me today. This is Chris Parr, Syrian and Lemurian Wisdoms and Teachings.